Hey there, welcome to DIY Projects with Pete. Today we're going to build a patio chair. Let's get to it.
The first step is to measure and mark for your cuts. For step-by-step photos and plans, head over to DIYPete.com/patio chair or click the link in the description below. Today's project is built out of cedar. For the front legs, measure up from the bottom to determine placement for the 2x6 board, which will connect the legs. Once you have the initial mark, measure 5.5 inches up and put another mark. Use a carpenter's square to draw a cutting line on the wood, and here's an up-close view showing the process. These cutout areas are what the 2x6 board will eventually rest in. Use a jigsaw to cut the notches, which are 1.5 inches deep. Start by cutting each end, then cut the back line, starting from the center and working out to each back corner. Test fit the board to make sure it fits, and make adjustments to the notch if it needs to be widened. Once the notches are cut, sand the boards to remove rough edges and to smooth things out. Dry fit the front section to double check that everything fits together. Then use a combination of wood glue and screws to connect the boards. Make sure the boards are square to each other before fastening them in place, and drill pilot holes prior to inserting wood screws to help prevent the wood from splitting. You'll use a total of 4 screws for this step, and then use a damp rag if needed to remove any excess glue. Now we'll move on to the arm supports. Cut them to length, then flip the front leg section upside down so you can use the flat surface of the tabletop to help hold the supports in place while connecting them. Drill pilot holes and use wood glue and screws for each joint. I use 3 screws to attach each board. Cut the rear legs with 15-degree angles on each end. You can use the first board as a template to mark the cuts for the second rear leg. If you are using cedar finished on only 3 sides like I am, make sure the boards are oriented correctly so the rough side is pointing toward the inside of the chair. Measure back from the front leg to determine placement for the rear leg. Use a clamp to hold the leg in place, then attach with wood glue and screws. Then move on to the second rear leg. Again, measure back and then glue, clamp, and screw the leg in place. The angle on the top of the board should sit flush with the arm support, and the bottom angle should sit flush with the ground. Measure up from the bottom of each rear leg and make a mark. Put the board in place, make sure it sits parallel to the ground, and then use clamps and connect with 2 screws on each side. Notice the front of the lower support corners are flush with the front of the rear legs. Next, cut the 3 seat supports. The front ends are straight and the back are at a 15-degree angle. The shorter end of the board should be about flush with the rear support. Connect each outer seat support to the legs from the inside. The top of the seat support will be flush with the front 2x6 board. It should also be parallel to the arm support. I then added an additional center support to help distribute the weight. Use glue and then put the screws in at an angle to connect the center board. Pocket holes would also work great for this process if you have a pocket hole jig. We'll move on to cutting the 2 backrest supports. Cut a 15-degree angle on each end. Line them up so they rest on the back horizontal support and are flush with the rear angle of the seat support. Then determine if you'd like to round over the tops of the board. Instead of rounding with a coffee can and jigsaw, I used a miter saw to make a couple angled cuts. Then I used that first board as a template for the second. Line up the rear supports again and draw a line where it intersects the arm support. Then use a circular saw to cut the angle to remove the excess wood. Clean things up a bit with a sander, and then we'll fasten the backrest supports. Use glue and pre-drill before inserting the screws. Add the screws from the inside and attach at both the outside seat support and the armrest support. Now we can add the wood slats to complete the back and seat. Start by placing a 1x4 board at the bottom of the backrest, fasten it in place, then use 1/4-inch spacers to help evenly distribute each board. Continue working your way up until all slats are in place, always pre-drilling before inserting the screws. You may need to rip a board or 2 on a table saw down in width to make it fit perfectly. Use clamps to ensure the backrest supports stay at the proper distance from each other so everything goes together correctly. Next, add the wood slats for the seat of the chair. The front slat should overlap the front of the 2x6 by about 1/4 inch. The rest of the boards are attached using pretty much the same process as we used for the backrest. Use a table saw to trim down a slat or 2 if needed to get a perfect fit. Use 1x6 boards to create the armrests. The back will line up flush with the back armrest support. The front will overhang the armrest support about 1 inch. I cut a 45-degree angle for the back of the armrest, and I used a paint can and jigsaw to round off the front ends. Sand the cuts and attach each armrest from the top side using glue, making sure to pre-drill and then put in the screws. The armrests are a great size to set a cup of coffee on and your favorite book. Fill in the screw holes with wood putty, let that putty cure, and then sand away the excess. Before adding a finish, do a quick sanding over the entire chair. Lastly, apply a finish of your choice. For this project, I used a couple coats of semi-transparent deck stain. And that's all there is to it. For the complete tutorial and plans, head over to DIYpete.com/patio chair. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and cheers from Montana. For more DIY inspiration and project ideas, please subscribe to the channel and check out some of the other patio project videos. Click on the left thumbnail to see how to build an outdoor concrete coffee table, and on the right thumbnail to see the concrete patio table, which was featured in Make Magazine. Thanks again for watching, and cheers from Montana.